The scene was a banquet hall, thick with the stale perfume of death and old cake. It was dressed for a child's birthday. But the guests, dozens of them seated around festive tables, were all victims of a mass poisoning. The initial assessment was grim, a mass suicide. But when the detective, a man who preferred his rank without the formality of sir, saw the little ones, the fire in his chest flared, and the simple suicide explanation began to feel very, very wrong. Children had no choice. A forensics expert confirmed the horrifying details: a hemorrhagic poison, cruel and slow. The why? A mystery, perhaps cult belief, perhaps simply what was available. Then came the discovery that changed everything: a camcorder placed strategically on a balcony to record the event. The detective retreated to a dusty security office, slotting the VHS tape. The footage began normally, people in their finest clothes, smiling, greeting the camera. Happy, a seemingly standard family party. He paused the tape, trying to make sense of the noise beneath the static, a raspy, chilling whisper. "Stay with me." He played it again, then paused. The static, that familiar screen snow, receded, replaced by a momentary, terrifying image. A grim, faceless angel. Tall, black-skinned, with leathery wings, it moved, it screamed, and then it vanished. Was it a glitch? Was he cracking? The detective rewound, determined to find the truth. Then he saw what he'd missed. In the background, a woman in a pale blue dress sat alone, vacant. Then a pair of dark, spindly hands, unnaturally long, rested on her shoulders. Slowly, she turned her face to the camera, a face of pure terror. As their eyes locked, a soft breath, a whisper came from behind him in the dark office. "Help me." He scrambled, falling and hitting the desk. But when he looked, he was alone. Shaken, he fled the office, seeking the reality of the murder scene. But when he pushed open the corridor door to the hall, he was met not with the silence of death, but with the sound of laughter and cheerful chatter. Peeking through the crack, the scene was alive. People were talking, eating, drinking. The party was happening now. How? The music stopped. A man's voice boomed over a microphone. "It's time to welcome our new guest." The detective's heart hammered as the man named him. "Please welcome the detective." He pushed the door open to a hall full of smiling, staring faces. On the stage stood the man from the video, a man named Ira Bradbury. "This has been a long time coming, detective," Ira said, his grip tight on the detective's shoulder. He revealed their terrible secret. These people, this family, were not just the victims of a suicide. They were the perpetrators of a string of cold case murders, victims who had all died the exact same way. "We are the chosen," Ira crowed, pointing to the celebrating crowd. "Able to live forever, a moment in time, embracing each other for all eternity. This is his gift, our reward." And then the final, chilling revelation. They hadn't just been watching the detective's investigation. They had been watching him, his commitment, his obsession. "You have been chosen," Ira concluded with a cold glint in his eye. "Better late than never." The detective was not investigating a crime scene. He had arrived at his own induction. I remember once believing that death was the end, a simple game over. No ghosts, no heaven, just the brain shutting down. That comforting certainty was the bedrock of my world right up until I saw her, the woman in black. Fresh out of high school and needing cash, I took a job as a landscaper at a cemetery. The work was decent, the outdoors pleasant, but the previous workers had all quit fast. My boss blamed the heat. I soon realized it was something else entirely. On my third day planting flowers, I saw her. She stood at a grave in a full dark veil, softly weeping. A peculiar sight, but people grieve. Curiosity, my ever-present sin, led me to the stone. It belonged to a man who had died 2 centuries ago. A mere ancestor? I doubted it. 3 days later, she returned. Same black dress, but this time she wasn't alone. An old man stood beside her, his dark suit worn and dirty, his movements jerky, painful. I watched the woman kneel, take a clump of grave soil, and behind the dark veil, I was sickened by the clear impression that she ate it. As they walked away, the old man moved with a horrifying, limping shuffle. I gasped when his foot landed with the sound of bones snapping. He snapped his head toward me, revealing eyes of pure, milky white. Blind, yet searching, unsettling. Days later, tragedy struck our town. A little 10-year-old boy killed in a farming accident. At his funeral, the strange pair reappeared, joined by a third. A pale, sunken-faced young girl, about 12, with the same unsettling white eyes. They stood apart, silently, intently watching the closed casket. That night, my duty was to help fill the grave. The cemetery, usually calm, felt wrong. Dark, cold, filled with a forgotten, childlike fear. I was headed for the gate when I heard footsteps and whispering. Thinking it was vandals, I crept over a small hill. My blood froze. There they stood, the 3 of them, gathered around the freshly filled grave of the little boy. The veiled woman knelt, chanting in a foreign tongue. Then she did the unthinkable. She lifted her veil. I fumbled for my phone, zooming in, and saw a horror that defies description. Her skin was dull gray, covered in sharp ridges, and in places jet-black soil pulsed beneath missing flesh. Her eyes were a horrifying, luminescent yellow. Before my eyes, she scooped up a glob of the little boy's fresh grave soil and consumed it. She gagged, then spewed forth impossibly long jet-black worms. They burrowed into the grave dirt. Silence. Then the dirt stirred. A pair of hands burst forth. The little torn boy crawled out. His skin was milky white, his shredded torso crawling with the black worms. They multiplied, wiggled, and formed new flesh, mending his wounds until he fully rose and was embraced by his mother. I let out a whimper. She heard it. The mother looked up directly into my camera lens, her cold yellow eyes drilling into my soul. Before I could move, the daughter was upon me, scuttling like a centipede. The father and son wordlessly shambled behind her. It clicked then, their jerky, unnatural movements. These corpses were marionettes, and the worms were her strings. She was a puppeteer of the dead. She stood before me, nose to nose. I could see the horrific worms crawling in the dirt on her face, pulsing in the visible veins on her arms. All I could think was, don't let it touch me. She withdrew her hand, gave a macabre, soul-chilling smile, and raised a finger to her lips. Shh, she whispered. Her entire family mirrored the gesture. Frozen, I nodded. I heard the sickening squish of decaying flesh and the snap of bones as they walked past me and disappeared into the night. The next morning I quit, let my boss think I'm lazy. The truth is too dangerous. I shattered my belief that death was the end, and I gained a new terrifying certainty. I no longer know what awaits us beyond the veil of life, but I know this. When I die, burn my body to dust. It is the only way to truly rest in peace. The night had settled, quiet and wet. Mary returned home, the gentle glow of the moon a momentary comfort. She stepped into the silent, dark house, a feeling of unease clinging to the air. The lights came on, followed instantly by the jarring ring of her phone. It was Hannah, her friend, checking in. The conversation was quickly shattered by a sudden car alarm. Mary stepped onto the driveway, only to find her car perfectly still, the alarm silenced for no reason. "That's strange," Mary said into the phone. "What?" A voice that sounded like Hannah questioned. "I didn't say that," the real Hannah insisted. A moment later, Mary heard it again. "Maybe you need to stay outside a little bit longer. Get some fresh air." Mary was furious, thinking Hannah was playing a cruel trick. But the fear turned to ice when Hannah's frantic voice whispered from the phone. "No, that's not me. Run inside and lock all of your doors." Then, impossibly, the familiar voice was right next to her ear. A soft, chilling whisper. "Please stay out here. It's not safe inside." Mary bolted, slamming the front door shut and locking the sliding glass back door. On the other side of the glass, a faint, impossible silhouette of a tall, impossibly skinny man stood motionless, simply watching. She hid in her bedroom closet, paralyzed by terror. After endless minutes of silence, she heard a voice. "Mary, I came here as fast as I could. Where are you?" "I'm upstairs in the closet," she whispered. But as she spoke, the closet door was wrenched open. Standing over her was a gaunt, dark gray figure, unnaturally tall with an impossibly long, stretched smile. Its eyes stared wide and unblinking, as if looking into the deepest part of her soul. Then it spoke, its voice warm yet profoundly wrong.
"I'm going to tell you what will happen. When you wake up, I will be inside of you. You will feel me inside of you for the rest of my life. I am you."
The creature tore its jaw wide open, revealing a blinding light. Mary fell into a sleep she couldn't control. When Mary finally woke, she could not move. Her body twitched and moved against her will. She felt thousands of screaming voices in her mind, and something writhing beneath her skin. She saw and heard everything, but she controlled nothing. Her body was no longer hers. Why fear what is not there? You fear what exists, and what exists is now inside. The sea took my mother when I was 17, a sudden, erasing loss that left no certainty, only absence. My father, a fisherman in a bleak New England town, drowned his sorrow in liquor. Already estranged, our relationship twisted into something inescapable and bitter. He blamed me for her disappearance, a silent accusation in his drunken, searing gaze. I looked too much like her. The long hair, the blue eyes, and what he called a housekeeper's frame, unfit for a boat. My mother's going was abrupt. A cryptic note she left me, not him, was my only proof she had chosen to leave. I only read it once, the last line, a haunting, fevered guilt. "You are worth the price." We were trapped together in that gloomy house, fighting our separate griefs and each other. Our family history was cursed. My mother's side had a legacy of women vanishing into the sea with few relatives left. Only my anxious Aunt Gracie and her son remained. One freezing morning, Dad barged in, demanding I serve as a deckhand since his worker, Arlo, had quit. I argued, but his class ring, a frequent weapon, dug into my thigh, ending the fight. I got dressed, resigned to a day of misery. The boat ride was bitterly cold. I felt a brief wave of nostalgia for the old creaking fishing vessel where Mom once taught me sea shanties. But that feeling was smothered by the memory of Dad's growing cruelty over the years, only ever checked by my mother's hushed defense. It's not her fault. Hours later, stranded in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by fog, Dad found a tiny scratch on the hull caused by a lobster trap I was supposed to watch. "You will never be even half the woman your mother was," he spat. Tired and cold, I snapped back, I can't believe she married someone as awful as you." His final words, fueled by years of resentment, were a sickening realization. "No, you did!" His anger was raw, the truth of his blame finally shouted. Then the fog swirled, and a shape began to wriggle in the distance. My father's face went deathly pale, twisting into a harrowing smile. He clutched my shoulder, his grip like iron. "Take her! Just take her!" he shrieked, pleading desperately with a vague figure in the mist. He wanted to trade me. He wanted to give me his daughter to whatever took my mother, hoping to get his wife back. The air suddenly smelled of lavender and orange peel, my mother's perfume. The mist coalesced into a familiar, slender shape. My father released me and lunged toward the familiar form, calling out, "Vivian!" The Vivian that met him was no loving wife. It was a horrifying, glistening skeleton, too tall and thin, its rotting flesh intertwined with repulsive sea life. Pale tentacles had wrapped around her, puppeting her. "Her for Andromeda. I brought you what you want, so give my wife back to me," Dad yelled, turning his manic eyes on me. Clarity hit me. He had planned this. He fired Arlo just to get me out here. As he charged me, ready to offer his sacrificial lamb, the boat began to rock violently. The sea was an angry, living thing. A massive wave broke, and the deck was instantly slick with freezing water. Dad stumbled, his legs shaking. As he cried my mother's name, he tipped backward over the bow and was swallowed by the black water with a muted splash. The waves calmed. I rushed to the edge, calling his name, but only the gentle lapping of water answered. Then my mother's skeleton tilted its head, and her voice, sweet, cooing, and terrifying, came from its jaw. "Andy, honey, what's wrong?" I was drawn to it, my feet shuffling forward, trapped by guilt and melancholy. But fate intervened. The rusty nail on the deck, the one Dad had left years ago just to watch me fall, tripped me. I landed hard on the deck, my eyes on the chipping blue paint. A shadow fell over the boat. From the water rose an ancient, massive reptilian creature, its pale, slitted eyes looming over the deck like an ancient god. The stench of rot and old blood was overwhelming. It heaved, and hot, putrid sludge rained down on me. Undigested remains. Then, inches from my face, something fell. My father's class ring, glittering with mucus and filth. A massive black forked tongue swept over my body, in and out, a terrifying assessment. Then, with a slow, cavernous, throaty laugh, the monster silently retreated, vanishing beneath the waves. The ocean went still. I had been spared. I never told anyone the truth. I simply said my father died in a freak accident. My kind Aunt Gracie became my guardian and moved us far inland, away from the smell of the ocean. Years later, holding my newborn son, I finally found a fragile piece. Gracie shared the family's old, dark belief. The creature leaves the women in our line alone if they bear a son. She believes the monster spared me because it knew I would have him. I don't know if it's true, but my son, safe in his crib, offers a kind of closure. My mother's final words finally make sense. "You were worth the price." I may never be called to the ocean, but I can rest a little easier knowing that with my boy, the cursed line ends with me. The storyteller began with a careless mistake, a drunken, late-night drive that should have ended his life. The collision with the big rig was sudden, anticlimactic. One moment, motion, the next, darkness. But this was no ordinary darkness. It was a complete absence, a state of nothing that preceded feeling, then gradually gave way to a crisp, white void. Consciousness returned in agonizing confusion, a mind scrambling for a frame of reference in a universe that seemed to be slowly reforming. He walked, But his journey was a mind-breaking illusion of movement, without progress, direction, or fatigue. A fleeting glimpse of a mirror self, a vanishing doppelganger that left behind a surge of alien memories, only amplified the fear. He was trapped in a soundless hell. Then a whisper, a genuine murmur in the endless silence. Driven by a desperate need for connection, he ran toward the sound until it stopped, replaced by a sight far more disquieting, an infinite sea of people all kneeling in silent prayer. His gaze swept to the horizon, where a colossal, grotesque form materialized. It was many times larger than any human creation. A gargantuan brain, slick with translucent green slime, with two long eye stalks that watched over the masses. He tried to rouse the nearest kneeling people, screaming warnings at the silent, praying figures. But they were unresponsive, seemingly unaware of the monstrosity. As the enormous eye stalks bent down and focused on him, pure terror took hold. He ran, but was effortlessly lifted into the air by a slimy tentacle. Looking up, the horrifying truth was revealed. The sky was not etched with dark lines, but with countless people, lifeless puppets dangling from invasive tentacles that snaked into their nostrils, ears, and eye sockets. The tentacle holding him paused, and a tiny eye stalk emerged, locking onto his gaze. Then, the tendril penetrated his skull, making contact with his brain. Massive knowledge flooded his mind. He saw his own past lives, from single-celled organisms to his current form. He saw the constant throughout all time, a guiding force. The colossal brain was God, not the simplified deity of human tales, but a being that forms worlds using code and mathematics, one whose true purpose is beyond human comprehension. This being possessed an absolute understanding of the universe, allowing it to perfectly predict and adjust all future events. He understood that he had been here before. All of us have been here, kneeling and hoping for a glimpse of this infinite knowledge. As abruptly as it began, it ended. The void dissolved into the sterile, white reality of a hospital room. He didn't remember. None of us do. Yet fragments remain. He now experiences dreams where he speaks to the version of himself from the void, a self that possesses the knowledge of God's display. This other self offers verifiable truths, proving the experience was real, suggesting that our minds are like radios, sometimes tuning into this outer frequency. He now lives with a terrifying realization. This God, while knowledgeable, is not necessarily loving. It has overseen every atrocity, every mass extinction. Knowledge, he suspects, comes through pain. He now fears what this entity desires from humanity, though a part of him is eternally drawn back, intoxicated by the memory of that infinite knowledge just over the edge of death. He concludes with a final chilling thought. We all belong there. It is our ultimate destination, the one place we all know is waiting. This is a strange tale from the coast of Georgia, back in the humid summer of 2012. It's a story found in the frantic pages of a stolen journal, penned by 4 young camp counselors determined to solve a mystery known only as Captain Jack. The object of their obsession was the abandoned, moss-draped tortoise cabin, set just across the estuary from their quarters. For years, locals said that every night at dusk, a pair of huge, unnaturally glowing orange eyes would appear in the right wing window. They seemed to stare, to follow, to watch. The counselors, Rose, Jerry, Beck, and James, began their secret log. James, the leader, was the most suspicious. He went inside the abandoned cabin and found no reflectors, no props, and no footprints save his own in the thick dust. Most people think it's a staff prank, he wrote, but their eyes, solid-shaped eyes lit up like a hanging Halloween decoration. Jerry was purely terrified, confessing, "If there's anything I've ever felt in this sad phase of my life, it's fear. Fear from Captain Jack." Rose was intrigued, though she later admitted the eyes frightened her far more than she let on. Beck, the sharpshooter, was pragmatic, betting it was a raccoon, but her true solution was less logical. She had a high-powered rifle smuggled into camp, determined to use Captain Jack as target practice. The counselor soon noticed strange things beyond the cabin. Rose saw a man walking near the cabin in sunglasses and a dark suit. A few nights later, James saw two grown men in full suits and hats, in July, entering and exiting the cabin, moving with a strange, slow, and jerky gait. Jerry later saw them around camp, describing them as two men in white coats walking like robots. He caught a glimpse of one's eye. It was bright, like it was being lit up from behind. Then came the turning point. On July 8th, Beck wrote her final entry. She finally got her thermal scope. She looked at Captain Jack, and what she saw was so profound, so terrifying, that she immediately dropped out of the project and gave her most prized possession, the scope, to James, saying he should look. By July 10th, James was unraveling. The eyes seemed brighter than ever, and he described a sinister, profound connection. Every time I look at those damned eyes, I connect with something bigger. It wants me to be scared, and it loves it. It stares like it can see me and only me. 2 nights later, Rose and Jerry saw the full extent of his collapse. James invited them over to look through Beck's scope, apparently unaware Beck had left the camp. His room was a shambles, smelling awful. He lifted the scope, looked for a silent moment, and then screamed a high, shrill sound. He threw the thermal sight at his own mirror, shattering both, and began frantically repeating, "Don't look! Don't look!" James retreated entirely. His room smelled of infection, his door was rarely opened, and management planned to fire him. On an unknown date, Rose's entries were interrupted by a new manic hand. "Stolen, I stole this. Rosie is such a heavy sleeper. When I touch her, I wouldn't want to stain her face. She wouldn't want the smell on her. It doesn't take an Einstein to know I'm oozing." This final author, James, had escaped his room, fleeing his own body. He made his way to Tortoise Cabin, where he found not a prop, not a raccoon, but the figure he called Captain Jack. He was so kind with the way he looked down at me. His head is so big and strange like a chewed gum, and he has the most beautiful coat. Mose? Have I ever seen a more cotton-strapped suit with all of its buckles and buttons, but so white, but so dirty? Captain Jack was a father figure, the captain of his children, who loved to watch them play when the sun went down. And if you don't watch out, Captain Jack will love you too. Counselor James Winston was reported missing on July 20th, 2012. When his room was finally investigated, police found furniture overturned. His dental records matched bite marks on the walls, and his mirror was shattered and covered with his own blood and body fluids. The journal was later discovered beneath the Tortoise Cabin crawl space in 2015. James Winston was never found. Hey guys, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate all your support. Don't forget to hit the notification bell. There's still so much horror stories I'll be exploring in the future. There's nothing I'd love more than to have all of you join me. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.